Welcome to Good Morning Indian Country. I'm Cole Brinks Plenty. So glad you can join us this morning. We have lots of great things in store for you this Wednesday, November 9th, as we highlight news and information from all across Indian Country. This project is supported in part by the National Endowment for the Arts, and also thank you to the other sponsors, the Lawrence Arts Center and the University of Kansas William Allen White School of Journalism and Mass Communications. Today, the Supreme Court is hearing arguments in the Brackeen versus Holland case. This case challenges that the Indian Child Welfare Act is unconstitutional. Arguments started this morning at 9 a.m. and are set to be finished up here in less than an hour. Our own Alan Stevenson is live at the University of Kansas, where a listening event is being held. What's happening out there?
Thanks, Cole. Holland v. Brackeen is a pending Supreme Court case of the United States brought by the states of Texas, Louisiana, and Indiana, and individual plaintiffs that seeks to declare the Indian Child Welfare Act, ICWA, unconstitutional. In addition to Holland v. Brackeen, these additional cases have been consolidated to be heard at the same time. The matter originally came up in a Texas District Court on an adoption petition filed by Chad and Jennifer Brackeen. After their effort was challenged by the Navajo tribe, the Brackeens brought suit to the U.S. District Court in Fort Worth. The Cherokee Nation, Oneida Nation, Quinault Indian Nation, and Marengo Band of Mission Indians intervened in the case. The U.S. District Court declared that the ICWA was unconstitutional and the case was appealed. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed the District Court in a panel opinion. The full court, on rehearing the case, held that parts of the law that set federal standards for lower and state courts were constitutional, but that parts of the law that required state agencies to perform certain acts were unconstitutional as a violation of the 10th Amendment. Dr. Sarah Deer is a University Distinguished Professor at the University of Kansas and Chief Justice for the Prairie Indian Community Court of Appeals. She currently teaches at the University of Kansas, where she holds a joint appointment in Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies in the School of Public Affairs and Administration, and a courtesy appointment at the School of Law. Deer, who will be leading the discussion session following this morning's arguments, says there are two key questions. Can Congress force states to comply with ICWA? And is ICWA a race-based law? Does it violate the 14th Equal Protection? Deer will address these questions and other issues that are raised during this morning's arguments before the Supreme Court. We will be following this morning's discussion for Good Morning Indian Country. This is Alan Stevenson. Thanks, Cole.
Thank you for that live report. We'll keep you updated on the hearings as we learn more. The Brooklyn Bridge fills with support for missing and murdered Indigenous people. The Brooklyn Bridge was read everywhere, with shirts, regalia, handprints last month for the second annual walk to honor missing and murdered Indigenous women and children. The walk was organized by the New Jersey-based nonprofit Anti-NACO. The walk drew up to 100 supporters, allies, and spectators to raise awareness about missing and murdered Indigenous people. Before the event, there was a ceremony and speeches held by Pitani Wayne Wilson. Wilson is a staff member of Anti-NACO who lost his daughter to human trafficking. Dakota, Lakota, and Anishinaabe tribal members also spoke at the walk. Chicago Native American community loses Suzanne Kelly Power at 97. Power is remembered for being a mother, lifetime activist, and friend to many. She was one of the founding members of the American Indian Center of Chicago. This was created back in 1953. It was one of the first urban centers opened in Indian Country to become a gathering place for the large influx of Native Americans into cities at the end of World War II and the Federal Indian Relocation Program. When the relocation program began, there were only about 750 Native Americans living in Chicago. Within 5 years, the number grew to over 10,000. Besides being a founder of the American Indian Center of Chicago, Power was heavily involved in the activities of other Native organizations. These included the Indian Council Fire and the National Congress of American Indians. She was the youngest member upon their founding in 1944. In the early 1970s, Suzanne became a pivotal activist in the Chicago Indian Village movement, which protested poor living conditions and inadequate job opportunities available to Native people lured into cities during the relocation period. The Nevada reservation reaches a settlement with country over an in-person voting access. The Nevada county that previously refused to offer in-person voting on election day to its citizens who lived on a reservation have reached a settlement with the Shoshone Paiute tribes of Duck Valley Indian Reservation. In years prior, tribal citizens were required to travel nearly 200 miles round trip to the nearest polling stations. And the settlement reached by the tribe and the county, Alco County, agreed to provide an early polling location on the reservation for 5 specific dates ahead of the general election, provide a ballot box for the reservation on election day, and provide 12 days of early in-person voting and in-person voting on election day on the 2023 election cycle. The chairman called the settlement historic and noted that it increased access to the polls by 5 times. An ABC News anchor refers to Indigenous people as creatures in reference to Native American Heritage Month. During news coverage on Native American Heritage Month, ABC reporter Kyra Phillips misspoke and referred to Indigenous people as indigenous creatures last Thursday. The mistake has been corrected, and the news company hasn't issued an explanation for the error. It was captured and published on TikTok by a user. The video has more than 730,000 views and thousands of shares. Popular social media handle Engine Comedy said in a post on Facebook, quote, "We are not something else anymore. We are indigenous creatures now." A South Dakota Senate candidate is charged with multiple sexual acts against an adopted child. Days before the midterm elections, Republican candidate Joel Kaskan was charged on last Thursday for multiple sexual acts against his adopted daughter. South Dakota Assistant Attorney General Mandy Miller filed charges last week. In her statement to the police, she stated that the adopted father rigorously monitored her actions and what she wore. A summons was issued for Kaskan last Thursday, and court records indicate that he has been taken into custody. If convicted of the charges, he faces up to 15 years in prison and fines up to $20,000. Red Don Foster ran for re-election in South Dakota's 27th district in this year's midterms. Foster joined Native News online editor Levi Rickert to break down her campaign and engage in young Native voters.
Yes, it's so very important. And I think that a lot of people will say, my vote doesn't matter. My vote doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. Well, Representative Puyer and I are a testament that it does matter. It does make a difference. When we are able to elect Indigenous representation, it matters.
Be sure to stick around for the 10:30 half hour to see the full interview between Native News online editor Levi Rickert and Red Don Foster. And for plenty more coverage on Indigenous stories, be sure to head on over to nativenewsonline.net. Coming up, Dr. Teresa Melk will join us live. She'll talk about her work and research into the historical precedents of issues concerning missing and murdered Indigenous women. We'll be right back. Welcome back to today. Mato Standing High and Barth Chief Eagle Robinson are hosting a roundtable discussion on Native American media with Bert Hesse at Wonderlore Studios. They'll discuss their company's Native American initiative as part of the 2022 Native American Studies celebration. It'll happen at 5:30. Tomorrow, a conversation on Two-Spirit identity and cultural expression will be live streamed. It'll be hosted by Landa Lakes and Roger Kuhn. It'll start tomorrow, starting at 6 p.m. And a new exhibit opens in Portland, Oregon. It's called Dakota Modern, The Art of Oscar Howe. It introduces new generations to one of the 20th century's most innovative Native American painters, Oscar Howe. It'll be open through May of next year. For more info on what's happening all around Indian country, the other events, be sure to check out nativenewsonline.net. The American Indian Film Festival returns to San Francisco this week. This will be the first time it's in the city in 2 years. The AIFF is the most celebrated Native American film festival. It started back in 1975 in Seattle, then moved to the Bay Area and 2 years later. This year, the festival will have more than 70 films and 17 programs. 13 will be totally free for the community. The films will be shown all across the San Francisco area. You can catch full-length feature films, documentaries, live shorts, animated shorts, and music videos all week long. Thanks for sticking with us this morning, Indian Country. This project is supported in part by the National Endowment for the Arts. And don't forget to follow us on social media. We'll see you right back here next Wednesday.